All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun, and we have returned once again to continue our coverage of the 2019 second season of AMC's The Terror. This season is called Infamy, and it deals with the supernatural and very human actions taken against these families that are put in an internment camp in the 1940s. One of the great shames of one of the many great shames of this nation, when we, as a when our government decided to lock up all the Japanese after Pearl Harbor and separated them from the rest of us until the duration of the war was over, putting them through many indignities and disrespectful and just awful. I don't even like talking about something that's happened a long time ago and like trying to give it weight and trying to give it feel like sound, like acknowledge and sound, like not like an ass when you're talking about these moments is really daunting. Cause there's like nothing I can do, all I can do, like when you're talking about this and you feel like this and you know how wrong it was and there's nothing you can do after the fact. And again, the important message is that to learn from the mistakes, not hide from them like they want you to. These things need to be remembered because they easily can happen again when they don't. And if history proves it everything, it's that we don't even listen to that. We don't even allow ourselves to remember long enough that when everything happens, it just keeps happening over and over and over and over again. So when I procrastinate and I don't do things when I should, and I make bad, stupid decisions sometimes, I should remember America has done a lot worse than just, a lot of worse things have done than the procrastination that I do. But we're talking about episode 3 today. It is called Gaman, Gaman. That's how I'm going to say it. It means to endure the seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity, which is a big through line for what happens in this episode. Speaking of the episode and what we're going to be talking about, if you're liking what we're doing here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for all notifications, all that stuff, man. Just, I just want everybody to be able to find it, find these videos. I also want to mention for the first time, I think, the like when I saw the writer, director, and I remember the producer of this series, I just want to talk about like just briefly AMC's in this show to like you got visionary director Ridley Scott behind, like who's the main executive producer. And then when you bring in like writers like Shannon Goss and directors like Michael Lehman, that is like huge. That's a huge pedigree for just one. Okay, I know that they've like directing TV is old hat now for these people, but when you see what they've written and what you've seen what they've directed in the past, I love seeing this kind of quality put into a show like this that hardly anybody knows about, right? I could probably talk to just about anybody around me in a mile radius and not have many people say that they've seen the Terror Infamy, you know what I'm saying? But to still be able to hire and commit to the quality that they put into this. Because Michael Lehman, yeah, he directed Hudson Hawk, but he also directed Heathers. And Shannon Goss has directed so much good or written so much good TV, it's hard to count. And the acting, again, when you have a pool from Vancouver like this, you have like a ton of great character actors. So that the care that goes into this, the making of the camp to look as realistic. I mean, I swear there's a shot in this that looks like it just, you're supposed to be you like since you know the history, you know that the concentration camps that the Japanese were put in, the Japanese Americans, and just let's call it some were straight up, they were straight up American born citizens from Japanese immigrant parents that were locked up to me illegally. I don't care what that president wrote down. I don't give a shit. FDR put a bunch of people in the stockades, you know, but when you think of concentration camps, you think of the Nazi ones, and there's a shot in this, man, that made me realize, like, they might not have gas chambers in this place that they're at, but it still looks and feels like a concentration camp in Germany, and they might be able to wear their clothes and not be put in, you know, I don't even what would you call those just that they had them wear back in they were like pajamas. Right? They were just like night clothes, like, that you would wear to go to bed everywhere you went. And, they might not have all that, but, they're still living on top of each other. There's no privacy. They watch you while you pee. Good luck jerking off, both girls and boys, okay? Good luck trying to have a second alone to do anything private or whatever. Alright? I'm just being real. Just being real, like, good luck doing anything with that amount of people around you, to have any kind of normalcy, any kind of thing to distract you from, where you're at, what you're doing, your lot in life. I mean, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how I'd handle it if somebody decided that I had to just, like, me and people like me were suddenly going to be, like, rounded up and put in a cast. Like, what I don't even know. I I'd like, I wanna be like, that ideal of myself, like, "I'm getting out of here, man. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna run and I'm gonna be like a hero." So you're like, or do you just that's what this show brings up, man. The absolute indignity of all this. But they do it, and the term gammon is what you see most of them doing, which is in the younger generation, again, this will be a lot of generational stuff, is the younger generation saying, "Why are you just sitting here? Why aren't you doing anything?" And the older generation looks like, no, this is how you survive, this is how you get by. And that indoctrination, whether it comes from their own country or from what we, like in Henry's case, what was done to him, and then to just, without saying you're a broken person, just still knowing that any kind of fight you put up is pointless. And if you get to that point in your life where you don't even know why you're surviving, you're just alive, I guess. I don't even know how you go on from that. So anyway, as we get deep, dark, and dirty right off the bat, because I just want to kind of give a sense of the episode, really. Because this is all just people having to live with people and what happens when you're all there and what you start to go through psychologically when you're surrounded by your friends and family, but you're also surrounded by people that were your friends and family, or you thought they were, until they decided to fence you in and tell you to build the fucking fence yourself. Maybe that's why Trump thought that they would build a wall, right? Maybe that's why he thought the Mexicans would build the wall for him. Right? When you have that kind of mental fucking, when you look at people like that, like barely as people, not even as people, of course you're going to say, "We'll have them build the wall for us." Because those motherfuckers, that's what they do. Anyway, to start off this episode, because we're getting full and deep into it, this might actually end up being a little bit longer than the last one. I don't know. We'll see. But I really liked the creepy opening scene of them watching like a movie night. Now it's 1942, so I mean there were talkie movies, but they didn't have that. They didn't give that to them. So they're watching like this old silent film western, but like done in the I like it's reverse. Like when you think about watching stuff from Japan or Korea or China, right? It's, to me, a lot of stuff gets lost in translation. And a lot of the, like, performances and the way, it's, like, very over the top, it's hard for me sometimes to take seriously. It's just how like, when you watch enough, when you're unfamiliar, it can be strange. It can be like, getting used to anything new. Um So, but what I like here is that when they translate the American Western, they still do it in that kind of loud, over the top way. that it's just like that's just how they translate it, and it translates probably better for them than it does for us in American. But during this silent film that looked like a John Wayne movie, like really early John Wayne, Chester, like all of a sudden, the voice of one of the pure person on screen, the cowboy says, "Chester, you have to go," and he starts seeing the interplay of like this person that's on the film become Yoshida, who gets shot up, and it's like suddenly Yoshida's in the film in like this weird grainy black and white, film, getting shot to death by the soldiers, and Chester just has to beat feet out of there. 'Cause he's just it's triggering. It's really not happening. This isn't caused by Yuko. This is more like PTSD. This is seeing something traumatic and then having a like, reliving it because you're sitting there watching something that triggers it. So I love that in this episode of that has this supernatural bouquet around it, where these terrible things and, like, it's a lot like Alien, right? In a way. You have these people on a ship. They've got a job to do. That's the whole environment. The ship is basically a character, right? And they go and they pick something up, and one of them gets hurt, and they bring him on, and they go back on their way. And then this thing comes out of one of them, and then the rest of it becomes this like paranoia uh, of what do we do when we're trapped in this place together, and can we even trust each other with the whole thing with the synthetic. There's a very kind of similar feeling here to me. Maybe I'm reaching, I don't know, but like I said, they have no privacy. This looks and feels like a concentration camp, like as you watch it. Not being able to take a leak without a guy's spotlight on you, to continually be put in degrading and inhuman situations. I mean, Luz is called. I mean, but here's the thing. I don't want to just paint this as okay. Look at the Americans. The white people did this to the Japanese. This is a story about how everyone, everywhere, and all cultures hurt each other based on biases, based on indoctrination, based on ingrained false knowledge and bigotry that people have for poor versus rich, or even what just well off, all the different ways that we separate from each other in our heads, the way we divide each other up in classes and races and genders, and it's all plays out in this, all the things that we do and all different sides. So it's not just white on white, because they call Luz a whore. She's in the women's barracks and they call her a whore. Why is she a whore? Because she had sex with that outside of marriage? Okay, it's the 1940s and everybody's got a stick up their twats. So fine, right? That's pretty commonplace. It was like if you sleep around, but the thing is the only reason people call you all those names back then is because they were too afraid to break from tradition, break from their indoctrination, because they were too afraid of what it would look like and what people would say, instead of doing what they want, which is to fuck, and being shamed into it. And that indoctrination, that kind of stuff is still so prevalent, and it informs so much of how we act today. Still, it's 2024, and so many ways we still act like it's could be 1942. So it's not, and it's not just because, she had sex out of wedlock. It's also because she's not Japanese. And you have the race mixing biases that are it was happening on all sides. Black, Mexican, white, Japanese, all of them. It was all frowned upon. And again, this is like not long ago. We have made some incredible leaps. But at the same time, we still have these jerk offs that want to keep pushing backwards and backwards. And I guess this is just what it feels like to live in the moment that you're living in. And I bet you it felt like that to the people living in other times. They were just like, why can't we just move forward? Why do we always have to fight some other person that gets freaked out as they get older into having to like share the world and society? It's why I've been getting a lot more frustrated as I get older and more informed. But and sometimes I go, man, I wish I didn't know anything, you know? Sometimes I wish I was just another just dumb sap who walks around, only let's watch some football and let's watch some goddamn, fucking Fast and the Furious movies. And look, I don't mean it like that if you like those things that you're bad or anything like that. I mean the people who are just I don't know, sleepwalk through life. And I'm not saying because you like those things, you're sleepwalking through life. It's just there is an element of the population that treats all of those things as they were just examples of like just duh, I don't know. There goes the sub count. Boo! Like what you like, never apologize for it. But there's the attitude that goes with it, the mentality that goes with it. And not with everybody, but with some of them. See, even I've got a problem, right? Because it's coming off of me, like there's still like I say like what you like, but in the end, I'm like, I don't, but I don't judge people who like it. I just tell them, nah, it's not for me. And in the midst of all of this, you've also got Yuko just creeping around everywhere, spying on Chester and Luz especially, and the gusts of wind. Okay, it's clear now that like whenever there's a gust of wind, it means Yuko's around. Um, because and I just loved that they don't. And I mean, they've been saying it basically since the first episode, or they've been showing us since the first episode. But I think by the third episode here, they subtly, without words, really kind of let you know that that's what the wind means. They bring it up when they talk about Luz falling down, and something bad happening right around as the wind happens, Luz falls. When this happens, it's because the wind was just there. All these precursors that involve the wind. Chester just looking around and looking around, using his eyes, using his camera, tells us that he understands this, and now we do too. That every time something gust of wind happens, something bad is about to happen, and it's probably involving Yuko. And even in the garden, right? We've got Chester's mom, we've got Amy, and I think we got Amy's mom too, I think. And they're sitting in the garden just talking bad about Luz, how she's ruined Chester. And I mean, even Amy, the best she could come up with at the time is like, well, she's here, right? I mean, I think Amy's mom, if it is Amy's mom, she's like, why is she even here? She didn't have to come here. And it's like, well, she is. Don't you understand? Doesn't that mean anything? And they say nothing because they know they're wrong. But again, that fight, that internal fight to fight your own indoctrination. It's one thing to go, I know I drink too much, or I know I smoke too much. But it's another thing to actually be able to fight those things. Fighting indoctrination is the same as like fighting an addiction. Anything that you've been doing for a really long time, it becomes normal, like a schedule. When your schedule gets thrown off, and all of a sudden people just expect you to behave normally, and you're like, no, you've been doing something for so long, and now all of a sudden record skip comes along, and you have to do something different. Everybody reacts this way. It's normal. But you have to also adapt. Otherwise, you will just be miserable and unhappy. I mean, think about these people that sit there and talk like this about people. Do you think they're happy? Really? I don't think so. I think it's just a cycle of unhappiness by everyone, by talking down about other people. You feel bad about your own situation, so you poke at someone else. But they find, and I think it's funny that while they're talking like this in this kind of poisonous way, they talk about how the soil here is no good. Let's blame it on a spirit or a curse that's following us, right? Instead, it's also like, I feel like the curse is almost them and their behavior, and that like you get what you put in bad, you're gonna get bad. Because even though the pepper that she finds that has, oh look, there's this thing's okay, and she bites into it and it's filled with bugs. And that wasn't meant to be like, I mean, maybe it was a little supernaturally, but I don't think it was meant to be. I think that this show has so many different meanings. Things are like metaphorical and literal are happening at the same time on this show. Okay, C. Thomas Howell. I thought that's who that was in the trailers and pictures I was seeing, but I couldn't be 100% sure until I looked it up in this episode. He plays Major Bowen. Oh my god. He doesn't I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff over the years. He was everywhere when he was young. But playing this kind of like he reminds me a little bit of like a Howard Hughes type. Uh Mixed with like an Oppenheimer, mixed with like a just businessman. I'm the hello people. I'm one of you. And what are we doing today? Oh, hey, give me that fence. Hey, I heard you people were industrious. Treating like this absolutely horrifying situation like it's any old thing. Talking to the prisoners like, hey, we're all in this together, right? Kind of tone. But having that other part of the tone being like, oh, hey, you guys aren't really, always, helping us out as much as you could. Could you please help us imprison you better and more effectively? And when you're building the fence for yourselves, could you really make sure you couldn't get out from it? That kind of like person that exists. That's why I bring up the Trump thing about how he thought, he talks about Mexicans building the wall. That disconnect that they're talking to you, but like you aren't a person. You're like an NPC in their lives. It's horrifying. And it made me want to like jump through the screen and pistol whip the guy. But I guess that's part of my problem. See, I was quick to anger. But when he told him, like, I thought you people were industrious. Oh my God. But then immediately after that, right? You've got one example on one extreme. Then on the other extreme, you've got the guys from San Francisco. I think one of them's name is Ken. And it's like we're the Japanese citizens from America. Where are you? Are from San Francisco, and they're dressed nice and spiffy, and they speak very well, right? And then they're like, "Where are you guys from?" And they say Terminal Island, and it just they don't again saying coming knowing exactly what is going on without anybody saying a word, which is the financial divide now. Now there's adding this. Whoa, you guys live on Terminal Island like you're a bunch of fishermen, a bunch of poor people. And he doesn't have to say that. What he says is, you can't miss what you never had, right? That's all he says. We're from San Francisco. Where are you from? Terminal Island. Well, and there's a look and like and it's just they say what they say and it's like holy shit, man, they just dressed him down by even saying it in a way that's like meant to like, well, that's okay, If you didn't know about it, what do you know if how do you know you're missing something if you've never had it? What a fucking kind of and again, this is Japanese on Japanese. But it's universal. Again, the haves and the have-nots. All these separations. All these ways of like how you can have a conversation with somebody, right? Two strangers can meet on the street and have the most wonderful, epic, life-altering conversation. Let's say, but they never get to anything about who they are, what they do, how much they make. But if suddenly those topics come up, as much as people go, "Oh, I don't do that, and I don't see it." It changes things for most people. And suddenly, like, if that person goes, "Oh, yeah, and by the way, I'm a Republican. Oh, by the way, I'm a Democrat," it would fucking change everything. All of a sudden, instead of and you could be talking about all the commonality, all the things that you have in common, but as soon as you bring up the thing that makes you different from each other, suddenly that is what becomes the most important thing. This did bring up also a thing that sent me down another usual X-Files rabbit hole because they they see a couple of Japanese working with Reed Diamond's Colonel Stallings. Reed Diamond's in this show had a Hail Hydra him fucking self. is playing a colonel in this, and he's got a couple of guys hanging up like a sign up sheet for translators, and they call these people that they say, oh, those are a couple in the Nasai. And the first thing I remembered was the episode of the X-Files from season 3 called Nasai. It was a two-parter called, there was Nasai and 731. And I was like, what does that have to do with it? It really drew me in really fast. I was like, X-Files, what? I need to tape an X to my window and turn on a light and wait for X to come fill me in on the information. So I looked it up, and it means Nasai means, I don't know why I didn't know this from a million years ago, but Nasai just means when they say that those are Nasai, they mean that those are second generation Japanese born from Japanese Americans born from Japanese immigrants. On the flip side of that, the Issei are what they call parents from Japan with American-born kids. It's all these terms that they have, again, to separate themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just it's we don't do we still do that? Do we do that here in, like, I don't know. I guess we do. Yeah, we definitely do. Again, there's definite terms for different societal when different economic situations. There are definite terms for different people. I loved the dream sequence of Henry and Chester's mom. I can't remember her name right now. Having the dance scene in the middle of the camp with all the lights and everything. It was real. I mean, it was clear it wasn't happening, but I thought it was a really, really nice imagery of like when she gets woken up and Henry's back. And so the contrast of the beautiful moment that they have, and she wakes up and runs to find him, and you see gosh, I forget what his name is now. All of a sudden, George Takei's character, bringing along the others. Let's see. I have my notes here. There's so many notes. Anyway, Henry comes in is the last one in, and he's limping so bad, and I was like, oh my god, what happened? You know, did they break him? And yeah, they kind of did. He's not himself. He's limping because of frostbite. He's limping because they beat him. He's limping because they left them out in the cold. And when he left, he was telling Chester to enlist, be an American, be all you can be, basically, you know? And he comes back and he is not singing the same tune. But he also still acts like everybody's supposed to just kind of know what he's thinking. The way he acts, where he just changes his whole pattern of life, is almost like, what, you didn't expect me to make this complete change in my personality? But again, they didn't get to see him get broken down. Neither did we, really. We saw the start of it. But he's living that Gaman lifestyle. He's the one that's like, after all this has happened, he's telling everybody to shut up. Don't talk about, basically saying, don't talk about where we were, what happened while we were there, who it was, what it involved, who was involved. He's shutting it all down. But not because of like some kind of a patriotism now. He's doing it because we saw what they did to the guy on the ice is what they instilled, which was paranoia about spies, that you can't trust even each other, and the psychological warfare that was going on, and what it does to people when you do this, when you set them up against each other. So that these guys, remember, these were the men, these were the heads of the house that they sent out and separated from their family so they could mentally break them down, so that when they came back to the camps, they would be docile, so that they wouldn't rise up. They made them weak. This wasn't like some, like, oh, we just want to ask them some questions. This was planned out. Think about this. This wasn't just telling people that they had to live separately. They separated them, and then they separated them, and then they moved them around to make them confused. This was all psychological warfare that we did on these people in a second. which means there were plans in place to how to do this already. And then now they're just learning on the fly and complaining about the problems of keeping up a camp of people that might not want to be there. So after all that, Chester climbs a tower that somebody had left unattended, and he looks out because he hasn't been able to see from this vantage point of how massive the camp is. And when he sees how big and how many of his people are there, he smashes it, the light that's up there. This also brings to mind the Trail of Tears, where all the natives, the indigenous people here of this country were all walked to their places they were allowed to live and stay. Sorry, this is making me kind of mad. And I watched the episode and I wasn't this mad. George Takei talks about how Yoshida, the one who was shot up by the soldiers after Yuko took him over, that he was always careful and that you just never know who's going to snap. And he, Chester tries to say, hey, look, man, no. Something happened to dude. And that they with the Ofuda that they took, I think it was that paper that we talked about with the wording, the protection from spirits won't help them from the human problem that they have. And again, this is where we see more of like what Henry was trying to communicate, which is spies and paranoia, and you can't trust anybody, because that's what they did. They got the strong ones, the father figures, the ones who would tell their families how to behave, into broken men. Yeah, and so that's where Chester explains what happened to Yoshida and he's bringing up the Bakemono and the Yurei and how they're in every country and it follows you like a curse. And that made me think again of the movie It Follows and how you can run as far away as you want. This thing that's haunting you, this curse, if you will follow you to the ends of the earth. It might take a while for it to catch up to you. And it's kind of like another metaphor and another thing literally happening. Do you know what I'm saying? The old sayings of you might be done with the past, but the past ain't done with you, especially if you've left unfinished threads that could definitely, that are just a matter of time before it finally reaches you from all the years in the past and it just snatches your ass. um, and we see poor freaking okay, as horrifying as the very first death was on this show, the freaking needle through the head. Hideo, her husband, he's been blinded by being forced to stare into the sun. He has had to put up with all the stuff at the camp that he was at, the psychological breaking. He's had to see Yuko in his blind state, telling him, haunting him from there. And now he's taken over and he starts choking out his own son. Yuko has taken him over, starts choking him out, screaming about swallows everywhere until they can finally pull him off. And again, Chester goes and finds Hideo later, brings him Sasaki, and he's like, what happened? And this is because Chester, at least, and again, I like that the characters in this are more open to what is happening. They're not like scullying all of this. They're used to talking about spirits as part of their culture, so it's just like believing in it is not so much of a leap. And while I don't believe in any of it, I like that they believe enough to talk about it openly like it could be real. So when he talks about this thing haunting Hideo, at least it's acknowledged that something really bad is probably happening. They try to get a job for Amy at that Major's place, the C. Thomas Howell character, and he just the way he's complaining about them to their faces, but like it's just like again the disconnect is just it drops my jaw to the floor. But in the interview, the most interesting thing about that in the interview to get her to become a secretary was how, again, generationally, she's speaking like, and she's a good American. She wants to serve her country. And Amy's just sitting there like, I don't give a fuck about any of this. I'm here because she's making me. And he can see it. And he's not being fooled by any of what she has said. So it's the difference generationally of like, they think the Gammon way of like, just keep nodding, keep surviving, do what you have to, say what you have to, fall in line, don't step away because, and it's hard to see people act that way. It's hard to see people give up who they are like in front of other people like that. I just it's sad. Hero kind of okay. Now we do get a freaking like full on X-Files connection here because the doctor who checks on Luz is played by Hiro Kanagawa. Who okay, this is how much I love the production that it was back then and from the X-Files. It's like Hiro Kanagawa has been working for so long in this industry, right? He's got over 200 credits to his name, over 200 and more coming. This guy's been working forever. And when it came to the X-Files productions, he was in 8 of them. And I didn't care in my notes. And it's one of the reasons why I can't wait to eventually talk about the X-Files is because there's so many cool ways to talk about it. And one of them is the connections that how many actors got to play different roles on the X-Files multiple times. And you didn't care because the actors that were in that show always made you believe that they were a new character and not the old one. You never saw it. All you saw was, hey, that's that guy. And now he's this person, not that person. And it's amazing. And I wanted to write down all the things that he was in on the X-Files, but like we're gonna save that for when I talk about the X-Files. But Hiro Kanagawa, I mean, and it's like he's been big parts, small parts, this barely any part. He barely has any lines, but he's been in everything. He's one of those guys. And then like I said, poor Hideo, right? First he tries to choke Toshiro, and then he's dragged out of his prison cell by a possessed American soldier who drags him out into the woods. And I love the movement, the crickety crackety way of the soldier moving of like, it's like he's trying to fight but can't, or like something that's walking around in you and it goes away. And then like clearly like the essence of whatever Yuko is goes back into Yuko, and then she shows up and Hideo's blind. He's in the middle of the woods. He doesn't know what's going on. And she just grabs him by the hair and pulls him up, just torturing this guy. And then we finally get a glimpse into what happened. And that Yuko was a person. And something happened. And she says, "You said I was exquisite." And he's like, "What do you want?" And she's like, "Only one I want." So right off the bat, this leads me to believe that Hideo and probably several others were part of some sort of group sexual assault. And if she's so interested in Chester, the only thing I can think is that somehow he is the son of Yuko. But who's the father? I don't know. And that's just another working theory. Because I had the theory about this being, I said that this was going to go all the way back to Japan. So I still say that that's valid. I just didn't know how or why. Because they talk about a curse following you, right? So the sins of the fathers, right, are coming to be visited upon the son. But if the son is actually, you know, the kid of this person who died. I assume Yuko's dead. I assume this is some kind of like afterlife kind of curse pact with a demon. I don't know. But I really think that that's where we're headed now. And then it would be like, okay, what if Yuko was Yuko always something? How would they assault something like this? And if it was something supernatural, does that mean that whatever Chester is, it would pass it along to his kid? Is there supernatural elements to Chester's DNA and now his kid? Is that going to play a role in it? Oh my gosh. So after all of that, she re- kisses him, right? He's like trying to push away. She pushes her lips against him. She rips his tongue out very believably and very terrifying as he then chokes to death on his own blood because of the tongue being ripped out and he can't get up. And he's found the next day when little kids playing baseball, roll the ball into the woods, and there's Yuko staring at the kid, like as if to say, like, I didn't want him to not be found. Like, I want people to know that this is happening. I want to build more fear and paranoia almost because I'm just gonna basically point you right to where the body is. And they do. But let's see. They talk about, that somebody saw a lady in a kimono and Chester's there to hear that. And it becomes then Chester feeling like what has been told before, that he's surrounded by evil. And what do you do about that? Like, everybody's telling him to stay with his family, but everything else is telling him to go, to get away from his family. That this thing that's coming after you is just going to keep taking other people out around you. But why? It's all clear. And why is it like seemingly going after Luz now when they talk about the wind and how she fell? But it's like that strong wind knocked it over and she looking at Chester all the time. Is it because she's written a different race? Would it matter? Is she in love with him somehow? Did like what, like again, all these different maybes that are floating around in my head. So he finally goes, well, you have to like, okay, they introduced the whole thing with the Nasai and Reed Diamond and the translator. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, it's because they have to, to get Chester to become a translator. And that's what he does. He signs up. We have this pretty interesting scene of like him translating for them and them rejecting him, but him flipping it on them and saying, well, are you here to like just translate or are you trying to break codes? And all of a sudden Chester is like showing like how he saw in the wording of the messages that were in front of him, how there was a code built in and they couldn't be happier. And the thing is like they don't see him again as a human. That smile that we found our guy isn't like, hey, he's a real person. It's just I've found the tool for this job. That's the look on his face. It's not anything like that you can say is some sort of respect or anything like that. It's still more like, hey, I found the rat that knows how to break codes. Because that's how Henry feels. So Chester's shipping out in 2 days. Yuko is continuing to spy on Chester and Luz as this is all going down. And him having to explain, like, I have to go. This is the best opportunity, and no one is safe with me here. So before he leaves, he talks to his father, who is, again, he's been broken. And Henry, Chester thinks that this is what his dad wanted, to go serve, to be a patriot, to show them that we are, like you. But Henry says not anymore because he didn't have any idea what the government and Roosevelt, what they were capable of doing and how they beat him and left him in the cold, and they didn't care, and that he's no longer interested in serving, his country or watching his son serve this country. Chester says it's no way to live. But he's like, it's not. But this is what we do. Talking about the Gaman way of doing things. But if you don't do anything, again, die on your feet, or what's the phrase again? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. But when you can get people to break like that, where they just will do whatever they have to survive, meaning just become what they're being, if you want to live, you're just going to have to be a little tiny person after we've ground you down into a little nub, and that way we can just move you around and do whatever we want with you. And in the end, as Chester's leaving, we find out that he traded his camera for a dress for Luz, and they kiss, and the wind picks up, and Yuko's around. And right before Chester leaves, his mother cuts a little bit of his hair off, because if he's killed in action somewhere, they at least have his hair for a burial. And we know Yuko's around. We just don't know what's gonna be the next way we see her. Whatever. Luz has spotting, but she doesn't want to go back to the doctor that she saw. Convenient. A little convenient. I think they wanted to set up that the doctor wasn't really that into helping her. That way, later on, when she asks for a new doctor, you can they've already given you story. Like, they thought about that, those story beats. They set it up so that when she asks for a new doctor and it turns out to be Yuko, because of course it's Yuko, it still makes sense that at least the need for a new doctor makes sense, or at least they set up that her want for a new doctor, and that way they can just slip in this character real easy. So what is Yuko gonna do? Because Luz is freaked out about baby positions because of her mother and how she died, giving birth to her. And now Yuko is touching her belly, and we don't know the intentions. Are they benevolent? Or are they going to be, like, it's like, like, are you benevolent good? Are you benevolent chaotic? Or are you benevolent evil? Right now, Yuko is a wild card in all of it, because we still don't know, like, like we know something happened that probably is a real horrible assault that led to some births and deaths, but we still don't have all the questions or intent behind all this. And we'll be getting into more of that in episode 4 soon, hopefully soon, rather than later. I'm trying to do 1 or 2 of these a week, so be patient with me, because I have a lot going on in my life. But I'm trying to strike while the iron's hot and make as much content as I can while I can. So I hope you guys are still enjoying this really intense, to me, conversations that we're having surrounding this show. That's just, I love it. This is a fantastic series. I can't wait to see what they're going to do in 2025. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll be back for episode 4. Have a great day. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.